Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down every single matchup from week number 5, from Thursday Night Football all the way up until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the running backs in all of those games. Now, it's important to note that there are 4 teams on bye this week, so you got to get those players out of your lineup on the Detroit Lions, the Tennessee Titans, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Los Angeles Chargers, so we definitely are down a bunch of great and reliable running backs this week. But before we can get into the video, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 5 running back start or sit decisions for the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with the first matchup of the week, Thursday Night Football, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I think I speak for everyone when I say that I am a little bit tired of Bijan Robinson in fantasy football, and it's not really Bijan Robinson's fault, right? Last year, everyone, the fantasy analysts, the draft analysts, Mel Kiper and friends, were giving Bijan Robinson a gawk 9,000 special, right? Everyone had the knee pads out for Bijan Robinson, this amazing prospect at the running back position. The Falcons draft him very highly. They bring out the red carpet for him, and we all buy into him, right? We kind of avoid the fact that Desmond Ridder is there and that Arthur Smith is a little bit suspect. We all kind of fall into the trap there, and we're going for the cheese, and the trap ends up whacking us, right? But this year, they bring in a new coaching staff. They bring in Cole's Cash, Kirk Cousins, and seemingly all of the worries from last year have disappeared until I realized that Raheem Morris is just Arthur Smith 2.0. Last week, Bijan was out carried by Tyler Algier up against the Saints. And what Raheem Morris said after that game really stuck with me. He said that stats are for nerds. Now, I'm not offended because I'm some fucking nerd, right? I'm not offended because of that. I am offended because why are you not giving the ball more to Kyle Pitts? Why are you not giving the ball more to Bijan Robinson? And the fact that we continue to just rank this guy blindly, Stevie Wonder style, as a top 5 running back in fantasy football week in and week out needs to stop. Now, am I going to go ahead and drop kick him down the rankings outside the top 12? The answer to that would be a resounding no. He's still a top 12 running back, especially up against the Buccaneers. But I'm not going to sit here and just pretend like the first 4 weeks of the season hasn't happened. Now, is Bijan Robinson an absolute bust? Should you trade him for a half-eaten bag of potato chips? Of course not. But I still am going to start Bijan. I'm still going to rank him in the top 12. But just pretending every single week like it's all sunshine and fucking rainbows in Atlanta, it's not. Right? Unless you're going to Magic City. So, Bijan Robinson, I like him. I think he's a very talented running back. I like the spot here, but with Tyler Algier potentially continuing to eat away at touches, it's just going to start to get annoying. And now that I said this, now that I go on this whole rant, right, we all know Bijan's going to score like 35 fantasy points in this game. Algier had 8 carries for 60 yards and 2 receptions for 20 yards. Algier is, in my opinion, one of the best handcuffs in fantasy football. Now, Bijan is always going to be in front of him unless there's an injury, knock on wood. So Algier will never actually be a guy that you want to start in fantasy. But if he continues to see, 8 carries a game, it's going to start getting real annoying when it comes to Bijan Robinson. Now, Bucky Irving and Rashad with 2A's White both had 10 carries for 49 yards, which is just a very interesting tidbit of information that they both had the exact same stat line, but Bucky Irving ended up scoring that touchdown. Rashad is the superior pass catcher in my opinion, but with this being close to a 50-50 split, at this point, the guy that ends up finding the end zone will outscore the other. Neither of these guys are must-starts at this point in the season. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense is such a wagon, they could absolutely front hand, backhand, like that Key and Peele sketch, anyone, right? They could have that huge game where they score so many points. So you're still probably going to play Bucky Irving and Rachaad White, but they're both basically parasites to one another. They hold each other back. Now, Bucky is more likely to score, in my opinion, so I'll rank him higher. They are both, though, barely top 24 running backs, and if the Titans, the Lions, the Eagles, the Chargers weren't on bye, they definitely would not be ranked inside of the top 24. Next up, we move to London. The New York Jumbo Jets at the cold-like Minnesota Vikings. Cold-like Minnesota? Now, the New York Jumbo Jets come off an embarrassing loss up against Bo Nix, Sean Payton, and the Broncos, and the Minnesota Vikings come off a dominant performance up against the Packers. Now, I know the Packers made the game close, but for a majority of that game, the Packers were bad. That Vikings defense had them locked up, don't let me out. And the Vikings offense was stepping on the gas. Now, speaking of stepping on the gas, Aaron Jones did that last week. Sadly, he didn't able to get his Lambeau leap in the revenge game up against the Green Bay Packers, but he still finished with 18 fantasy points, which has been the case in 3 out of 4 games this season with 18 or more points. The touches are coming, and they are coming heavily like you haven't busted in the last week, and I expect, even up against the New York Jumbo Jets defense, that Aaron Jones gets dirty as a top 12 running back on the week. Aaron Jones has been a complete and utter steal in fantasy drafts. I was someone that was hyped on Aaron Jones. Now, we did get things wrong in the summer. I'm not going to pretend that I have a 100% accuracy rating, but Aaron Jones looking like a mighty fine pick so far. And we did just see the Broncos run pretty effectively on that Jets defense. I'm not going to sit here, though, and pretend like the Jets are the softest run defense on earth. For Ty Chandler, I do think that Chandler's another one of those guys that's a great handcuff, and the system is great here. But when it comes to handcuffs, the value is when the starter is absent. And with Aaron Jones pretty zant like Aaron Balake, he should either be on the bench or on waivers. For the Jets, the Vikings are the second best team against the run in terms of opponents' rushing yards per game. And with Breece Hall coming off an absolute dud up against the Broncos, this could be a recipe for disaster. Now, the thing is, after one down game, you don't need to jump ship, right? You don't need to abandon ship here. This should be a fine game for Breece Hall. The whole offense last week could not get it up, and they didn't even score a touchdown in that game. The matchup here being tough does scare me, but I still think that with so many running back workloads being suspect, that with so many running backs skill sets being suspect, right? With Breece Hall being one of the most talented running backs in the NFL, I still have to rank him inside the top 12, but he will definitely be on the lower end of the spectrum this week due to the matchup being incredibly scary. Braylon Allen, just like with Breece Hall, due to this Jets offense not being able to move the football last week, Allen was on the struggle bus. Now, in better game scripts, where we believe, hey, the Jets are going to lay a smackdown, brother, on their opponent, which I don't think is going to happen up against the Vikings in London, then Allen is start-worthy due to his goal line work and how the team does kind of script up certain drives just to pound the rock with Braylon Allen. But up against the Minnesota Vikings, he is a clear sit. Now we move to the Sunday slate, beginning with the Carolina Panthers at the Chicago Bears. Now, Jonathan Brooks for the Panthers is still in the final stages of returning from the ACL injury that he suffered last year in college and will not have his 21-day practice window open this week, which means that Hubbard will continue to get fed, and if the offense is able to look solid or at least not get smacked in this game, which I think is very unlikely, then Hubbard should end up as a top 12 running back. He has been a top 10 running back in back-to-back games and ripped off 22 or more points in both of those showings. Andy Dalton has completely saved Chuba Hubbard. Now, I understand Chuba actually had one decent game with Bryce Young, but frankly, the upside was never going to be unlocked with Bryce Young, who can't even see over the offensive line, playing quarterback. until Brooks fully returns, you just need to have Hubbard. Now, every week you don't have to rank him inside the top 12, right? You can rank him as a top 16 back, a high-end running back 2 weekly. I think that is really just going to be what you have to do. And in my opinion, he should be ranked this week inside of the top 12 because the Bears' defense is relatively mid against the run. Plus, Hubbard is basically locked into getting around 4 or 5 targets every single week. Now, Miles Sanders is a guy that I kind of like to shit on, Cleveland steamer style, right? Miles Sanders, I was completely off of him last year. A lot of Neanderthals were drafting Miles Sanders last season. I said, Dikembe, no, rest in peace to him. I shout on him a lot and said he was trash. And frankly, he actually hasn't been that trash this season. He's looked decent. But this is really Chuba's backfield until Brooks returns, so there is no need to play Sanders. DeAndre Swift. We got like the wool pulled over our eyes, right? They really tried to... Now, again, I didn't like DeAndre Swift at all in the fantasy draft process. I didn't like DeAndre Swift to start him at all this season, but the team went out and basically said, hey, we're going to give the keys to the backfield to Roschon Johnson. He's going to be the lead back. But then Swift played 63% of the snaps compared to Roschon's 37%. And I guess Swift took immense disrespect. He took it personally by what they said because the man scored damn near 30 fantasy points up against the Rams. He had 16 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown with 7 catches on 7 targets for 76 yards. It was like DeAndre Swift hopped in the fucking Pack-a-Punch machine before this game because he looked like a completely different player. With that all said, a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like DeAndre Swift is back, and you got to start him every single week, rank him inside the top 10, this, that, and the other thing, fucking play with his balls like a Fushigi. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that's the case. But this is a good spot up against the Panthers defense. I think he should be a top 24 back. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, oh, it's all fine and dandy with Swift because he had one good game. Roschon, now, if you did actually start him last week due to all of those reports, which I don't think is all that crazy to have done, thought, hey, he was going to get showered in carries. He did end up finding the end zone, though, so he didn't get completely raw dog there. He kind of bailout special deal with that touchdown, but it was definitely a letdown as of right now since the team doesn't appear to want to actually give the workload to Roschon. I think you got to keep sitting them. Next up, we move to the Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals, an AFC North division rivalry matchup. Now, Derrick Henry had his cock so far down the throat of the Buffalo Bills that they won't be able to eat without a straw. They're going to be sipping their meals through a straw for a month. Back-to-back top 3 showings for the boy, and there is no reason to believe that he can't continue to replicate this. Though, it is very, very, very important to understand that Henry is very game script dependent, meaning that when the game goes south for the Ravens and they can't run the ball as much because, when you're down, you have to throw the ball more, then Henry is basically written off of the game. Now, if they're in close games or they are winning, then Henry is going to rack up a ton of points. Ultimately, this game reeks of, at the very least, they're losing by a little, or they're winning the game. So that is going to be a good game script, a neutral or positive game script for Mr. Tractorcito, Mr. Henry, to take the Bengals to pound down in Cincinnati this week. Now, Big Justice Hill brought the boom on Sunday Night Football against the Bills. Top 12 finish with nearly 100 all-purpose yards and a touchdown. With that said, he only gets around 4 to 5 carries a game and relies heavily on 5+ targets to have a good game. It is too unsustainable weekly with Henry in this offense. So my belief as of right now, even in a tough bye week, I would not like to lean on Justice Hill. Now, when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals side of things, Zach Moss played the lowest amount of snaps this season last week with just 60% against the Panthers. This was also the week where Chase Brown played his highest amount of snaps with 40%. Now, both Moss and Brown had good outings, but Chase Brown did outscore him. 1 week, though, doesn't completely shift the tide of the offense, in my opinion. Now, if Chase Brown clearly outsnapped Zach Moss, then I would have started to panic. But right now, the panic meter is definitely lit up, but it's not at the maximum yet. I'm not panicking too much now. If the trend continues this week against the Ravens, I think it's definitely time to adjust. But as of right now, I'm still going to continue to operate like Zach Moss is the lead back. The Ravens defense is better than I've probably given them credit for, but I also don't think there's some elite defense. So Moss should be a middle of the road running back 2 on the week. With a lot of teams on bye, Chase Brown could be worth a dart throw. Last week, he flashed Barry Allen style, 23 PPR points, 92 all-purpose yards, and 2 tugs. Again, I will caution you guys to try to pump the brakes a little bit, right? I'm going to caution you not to go hog wild on just saying that Chase Brown's now going to be the guy, this, that, the other thing. Go fucking crazy. Put the tinfoil hat on, right? I'm not going to say that yet. But I'm also not going to fully dismiss it. For most people, I would recommend sitting him. But if you are down bad at running back, you could start him. Next up, we move to the Dolphins at the New England Patriots, and boy, have my Miami Dolphins been a complete and utter disgrace. But before we get real mad about the Miami Dolphins, before we break down this game and the rest of the games on the week numero 5 slate, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends, our partner over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, if you're brand new to Underdog Fantasy and sign up with code Notorious, you'll be able to claim your free pick, which for this Thursday night football, the Buccanners versus the Falcons, is going to be Cole's Cash, Kirk Cousins higher than half of a total yard. You match that with any of the Buccaneers players or any of the players playing on Sunday or Monday Night Football, you will be able to match those picks together. And if you do 2, you'll receive 3 times your entry fee. Now, if you do multiple, then you receive a higher payout. So you match the Kirk Cousins higher than half a total yard with one other pick, and you receive 3 times your entry fee. Plus, a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Now, if you're watching this after Thursday Night Football has taken place, you're like, Nick, I can't get the Kirk Cousins promo because it already happened. You'll actually just receive something very similar with higher than half of a yard for a different player. So again, sign up with code Notorious or click on the link in the video description for that free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So back on into things, the Dolphins versus the Patriots. I don't know how to put things kindly here, but the Dolphins are a disgrace. They are an absolute disgrace to the National Football League. I don't care that we lost Tua. I do care as a Dolphins fan. I want Tua to be okay. But frankly, Mike McDaniel has done a piss poor job at adjusting. Now, do I want Mike McDaniel fired? The answer to that is maybe. But my real thoughts are that when Tua comes back, the offense is going to be fine. It's going to be smooth sailing. But if you can't adjust the fucking offense to be focused around Huntley, who can run the ball, and instead you're trying to act like the guy's Tua and can throw a piss missile deep down the field when Huntley can't do that, it's not going to work. It is not going to work. So if Mike McDaniel doesn't get to work right now and figure out a game plan to beat the sorry-ass New England Patriots and we lose this game, I will fully be off the reservation. Now, when it comes to Devon Achane, without Tua, it is going to be terrible for Achane. Now, the Dolphins might as well hold a open fucking tryout tomorrow to find someone off the street to be the Dolphins quarterback. I'm not even kidding. Now, Huntley wasn't as much of a disaster as that disgraced Skylar Thompson, but it was far from pretty. Now, Achane is so good that there is still light in the darkness, right? But the floor is in the basement. You can't be, by any means, ranking Achane inside the top 12. Now, hopefully the Dolphins can hold the season together until Tua comes back, if he wants to come back, which is my assumption. And then, Tyreek, Waddle, Achane could all be fine. But until Tua is back, I don't think any of those guys are remotely close to being must-starts. Due to the upside alone, Achane is a running back too, but you simply can not trust him. Now, Raheem Mostert has been out for the last couple of games with a chest injury, and even if he does return, without Tua, there is no way you can start him, even though he looked great last season. If he misses, it will be Jalen Wright operating as the running back too, and even if he's the running back too, you cannot play him. I am hoping that Mike McDaniel gets in the lab and figures it out. But he had a long time to figure out the game plan to beat the fucking Titans, and the Dolphins came out completely and utterly lifeless. Ramondre Stevenson. Now, it looked kind of over. I'm going to be honest. After week 3, he had those great first 2 weeks of the season. Then prime time, he fumbles. The offensive coordinator's saying, oh, he's got a big target on his back. It seemed a little bit finito here. But then, he looked better up against the 49ers. Now, the Dolphins defense gets plowed every single week by the run. Doesn't matter if it's, prime Bo Jackson. Doesn't matter if it's LaDainian Tomlinson. Doesn't matter if it's me, you, Ramondre Stevenson. A train is going to get run on that Dolphins defense, right? So he could even, though he hasn't looked as good as he did through the first 2 weeks, where I will note it's important to remember he was a top 12 back in both those games, so you can't quit him. But even with how he looked the last 2 weeks, he could just fall ass backwards into a top 20 finish. I think the true upside is going to be unlocked once Drake May takes over, but as of right now, I'm still fine playing Stevenson. Gibson feels like another one of those guys that could look mighty fine, right? If you've ever watched Click, if you remember Kate Beckinsale in that movie with Adam Sandler, Kate Beckinsale was mighty fine. I think Antonio Gibson could be mighty fine. But the problem is, Stevenson's in front of him. So if the team was to just let him cook, they got rid of Ramondre Stevenson, sent him to Guantanamo Bay, then maybe you'd like Gibson. But with Stevenson still strongly ahead of him in the backfield, there's no way you can play Gibson. Next up, we move to the next matchup here between the Cleveland Browns at the Washington Commanders. Now, I posed this question in the waiver wire video yesterday, or it was the defense video. I don't remember which. You should watch both of them, of course. But I talked about how Jaden Stormy Daniels has looked so great that with the stats he's putting up, I think he could win MVP. But the problem is, I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that they would ever give a rookie in this day and age the MVP of the NFL? Now, do I think Jaden Daniels can continue to have an 80+% completion percentage? Probably not. But I'm just saying, do you think if he was to just play how he's been playing all season and he finishes very strongly, can he be the MVP as a rookie? I don't know. I do not know. I don't know if they would give him that nod. They'll probably just give another one to Lamar Jackson. So Brian Robinson of the Commanders didn't put up an insane point total that I thought he would, but he still scored 20 fantasy points with over 100 yards rushing and 3 receptions for 12 yards with a touchdown up against the Cardinals. This week facing a tougher opponent and with Eckler more than likely, in my opinion, potentially back. I don't expect as good of a game. But I still assume that he's going to be a top 18 running back because of the offensive output from Jaden Daniels. Now, every week, even if Eckler's in, you potentially have the vulture from Eckler or the vulture from Jaden Daniels. But again, when the offense is able to be on this high of a high, when they're able to put up so many points, you're just going to want Brian Robinson in your lineup, even if you do believe that the Browns defense is a little bit better than what they have shown thus far this season. Austin Eckler missed last week with the concussion, and concussions are really hard to discuss as some players are out for multiple weeks. They get thrown in the IR. They might miss the whole season, where some guys are back after one game. Some guys might play the next week. If he is back, in better scenarios, I think it would be fine starting him. But in this spot, I think I would stay away from him, especially since you're just really hinging on a long reception for him to actually have a good game, and you're also hinging on that touchdown. I would just leave him riding the pine. If he is out, McNichols will play, who found the end zone not once but twice last week. Wouldn't play him either, though, as I don't think he's going to be able to repeat that. For the Browns, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb is expected to return to practice on Wednesday, which would be tomorrow if you're watching this on Tuesday when the video comes out, though Stefanski has not committed to him making his season debut, which I think is more than likely not going to happen. Now, obviously, is a fucking guarantee that Nick Chubb doesn't play? Of course not. But I do view it as unlikely. And frankly, even if he does magically play, I think the team's going to use the just the tip technique, a technique we've talked about for years, where they ease it in, right? You don't go balls deep instantly. You want to ease it in, and I think that's what they're going to do with 9-inch Nicholas Chubb. Ford has seen a reliable amount of targets weekly, averaging around 5 a game. While I don't trust Watson at all, at this point in the season, Jerome feels like a safe bet to finish inside of the top 24, so he is a middling running back 2 for me on the week. I think we need to start respecting the Commanders' defense a little bit more, but I don't think the Commanders' defense will be a complete deterrent for Jerome Ford. It's more just the offense getting not that many points and the Commanders running away with the game. Donta Foreman had that week 2 experiment, right, where he got a bunch of touches and that failed. It blew up in their face, and he's barely been touching the ball ever since. Even if the Browns were playing up against a youth flag football team, I still wouldn't play Donta Foreman. Next up, we move to the Indianapolis Colts at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this is a game with 2 running backs that realistically I don't want to start. Jonathan Taylor suffered what is believed to be a quote-unquote minor high ankle sprain. When's the last time you ever heard someone say they have a minor high ankle sprain? A high ankle sprain is always bad. And it normally means you miss a week or multiple weeks. Now, does that mean that he's guaranteed to miss? No, because it's Tuesday and I can't definitively say that, but I think he will miss. And if you have Jonathan Taylor, you should definitely pick up Trey Sermon, as you just be a real jackass, not to pick up the guy that's free and you could just sub him in to be like a running back 3-ish type of guy, just strictly due to volume. Now, Sermon, I'll admit it. Sermon has never been a lead guy in the NFL, and he's been in the NFL for a couple years. He's been on the 49ers. He's been on the Eagles. His last 2 years, he's been with the Colts, and he never has been the guy. He's looked fine. He doesn't look amazing. He's okay. But he should be start-worthy just due to the volume. Again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like he's amazing. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like he's a must-start running back, but up against the Jaguars, he should be at least a running back 3 with, kind of like running back 18 to 24 upside. I would be shocked if he truly smashed, though, if I'm being honest with you, but I guess he could with all the volume. Tyler Goodson should be the running back 2 behind Sermon, assuming that JT is out. Iowa football legend, though, is not going to see enough snaps to consider starting him. For ETN, he played through injuries last week in Houston with a shoulder injury. He exited for a little bit in the first quarter and then came back. Tank Bigsby has looked better than ETN, though, and this is officially entering the range where it's almost going to be a fucking disaster. Because no one wins in the 50-50 situations. You can kind of start both of them, but their upside is limited by one another. It's like Rachaad White and Bucky Irving that we talked about a little bit earlier. And the thing, though, is at least Bucky Irving and Rachaad White are on the Bucs. They're actually good. The Jaguars are a fucking disaster, and if they're kind of facing a situation where it might be a full-blown committee, things are really bad for ETN. Now, I will note that Bigsby is still yet to eclipse 30% of the snaps on a regular basis, so we can't quit ETN just yet. And if teams were not on bye, ETN wouldn't even be close to a top 24 back, but with so many great backs on bye, he's a low-end running back too, but the risk is immense. There is so much risk with him. But again, with Tank, until the team fully commits to like the 50-50 split or Bigsby taking over, I just don't think you can start Tank Bigsby. Next up, we move to the Buffalo Bills at the Houston Texans, and everyone was really riding with the Bills, right? The Bills are the best team in the NFL, and then they lose to the Ravens, which again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like losing to the Ravens is like you lose to the Titans like the Dolphins did, or you lose to the Broncos like the Jets did, right? Losing to the Ravens is respectable, right? I'm not going to sit here and clown on them, but everyone was really high on the Bills, and then they lose. Now, should you abandon ship? No. Bills are still going to be a great team, right? The Ravens had the Bills feeling like Kenny from fucking South Park, because they got killed, man. Thus, leading the Bills to going away from the run, right? When you go away from the run and Cook only gets 9 carries, sure, he had 39 yards and he had 1 reception for 9 yards. That's just not good enough, right? But I don't think this game's going to go that way, right? I don't think that the Bills are going to be getting back shots given to them. I think this game should at least be close, or at the very least close, and probably the Bills will be leading. Now, Cook should be a top 12 running back. I'm just going to wipe my memory of last week. I'm not going to sit here and, be like, oh, be all doom and gloom after one down game, right? Just pretend it didn't happen. I love what I saw to Cook early on the season. I love what I saw to Cook towards the end of last season. The touchdowns have finally started to go his way this year. I think he should clearly be ranked inside of the top 12 at the running back position. Now, Ray Davis and Ty Johnson have kind of been interchangeable as the running back twos. In goal line scenarios, you'll probably see more Ray Davis or when they're leading, but when they're down, they're in clear passing scenarios. Ty Johnson is a better pass catcher, so he's going to be in there for that. Now, the running backs are both at about 20% of snaps weekly, Johnson, Davis, and then obviously James Cook is levels above them, so there's really no need to play either Ray Davis or Ty Johnson. For Joe Mixon, he has been labeled as day-to-day according to head coach DeMeco Ryans on Monday. Now, I'd be lying if I said I was 100% confident in him playing this week, and I don't think that I would bet my fucking life that he played or anything like that. But if he does play, he is a stone-cold lock to be a top 12 running back in my rankings. Mixon looked fantastic when he played thus far this season, and even before the injury in week 2, he was looking really good. It was looking like that could have been another big game. And with how the Buffalo Bills defense just had Derrick Henry rip them a brand new a-hole, I like Mixon's shot as a top 12 running back, assuming that he plays. Now, if he doesn't play, I don't want to say like I would be so against starting Akers, right? Because there's obviously worse options than Akers. But it feels like a clear split between him and Dare Ogunbowale, and Dare was the useful one last week. So if Mixon isn't able to go, I probably would turn the other cheek on playing Cam Akers. If you guys have enjoyed today's video thus far, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. Like it owes you some money, leave a like on today's video as well. Next up, we move to the 4 p.m. slate. This slate is a little light, obviously, due to 2 games being gone for the byes. And yet again, we go back to a 4 o'clock slate with only a couple of games. I get why it happens when there's bye weeks, but I really don't understand why when there's no bye weeks, we don't have like a more balanced approach, perfectly balanced as all things should be. Shout out Thanos with the 1 o'clock and the 4 o'clock games, because sometimes you're like watching the 4 o'clock games and the games just suck. And the game last week I thought was going to be awesome. Didn't even end up being awesome because Kyler Murray and the Cardinals just didn't really show up. But we got the Las Vegas Raiders at the Denver Broncos. Now, Alexander Mattison continues to look like the best back in the backfield, but it doesn't really seem hard to do because Zamir White has just been so bad. Nut low performances out of him. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Mattison, it seems like they want to give the ball more to him. At least that's what would make sense, right? Because Zamir White doesn't cut it. Mattison is still touchdown dependent, because I don't know if the team, like, while they should give the keys to the backfield to Mattison, I'm not too sure if they're ever going to actually do it. It's like with Roshan Johnson. They say they're going to do it and they don't do it. Now, Zamir White, I don't want to yell, so I'm not going to yell. But just imagine I'm yelling, all right? Zamir White had 17 fucking carries against the Browns. 17 carries. Browns defense hasn't been that great. He got 8 points at least, right, Nick? He got at least 8 points, right, Nick? It'd be impossible for him to get less than that. He scored 3 fucking points. And as the Italian would say, Mamma mia, that is not the good. The Zamir just stinks. And I was a Zamir White truther in the summer. I thought, you know what? Even though this you smell through the screen, even though this reeks of like the Chase Edmonds type, right? The guy that you get so excited about having a couple of good games, right? Even though it reeks of that, I think Zamir White's different. I think he is. He's not different. He's the same as all those other guys that we got super hyped to draft. Now, it's good because this year you didn't have to draft the overhyped running back, Kerryon Johnson, my guy. Carry on my wayward son, like in the 2nd round, the 3rd round. You got him a lot later, so it doesn't feel as bad. And I waved the white flag a long time ago on Zamir White, right? I already acknowledged that it was Jover, but it is truly over at this point. The guy fucking fumbled again last week against the Browns, and I hope they give the keys to Mattison, so at least you can start someone in this backfield. Javonte Williams for the Broncos continues to see 50+% of the snaps for the Broncos, which has led the games where he gets 5 carries. It's also led to games where he's got as high as 16 carries. it's a roller coaster ride at the running back position in Denver, and the team as a whole has just been a roller coaster ride. His production has been bad, regardless of how many touches he gets. He's fallen outside top 30 backs in every single game. And even if you like the matchup here up against the Raiders, there is too much risk baked into starting him. Jaleel McLaughlin with Tyler Bidet hurt, and I do hope he's okay. That was one of the craziest injuries I've ever seen, where the guy gets hit, and then he gets up, it's all fine, and then he gets the bench, near the bench, he passes out or falls over. It was crazy. They didn't really show too many angles of it on TV, rightfully so, right? You don't want to see something like that. I get it, but it's crazy. They said, though, he does have full movement in his arms and his legs. I assume I don't mean to laugh. I assume he's going to be out for a while. I'm not trying to laugh at an injury. I don't make fun of any injuries. I really hope the guy's okay. That was a truly scary sight to see. Jaleel, though, he's a talented player, but with this offense, they're not in sport mode. They're in fucking reverse. They're going backwards. I just can't see myself playing either Denver back until they figure things out, and frankly, I don't know if they will. Next up, we move to the Arizona Cardinals at the 49ers. Now, despite the fact that the Cardinals got reamed, Connor continues to be that bubble wrap, that condom wrap, the Trojan around your team every single week, outside of week 3, where the whole game got flipped upside down like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and they had a bad game. But besides that, Connor's been good, and he has earned a spot at minimum as a high-end running back too. And again, I say that at minimum. He should be a top 12 running back. Now, I'm not going to sit here again and balk Connor too hard because of the matchup against the 49ers being tough, but I still think James Conner should be good enough to be like a top 16 guy. Trey Benson did look good at the end of last week's game when they pulled Connor because the Commanders had them in the fucking walls of Jericho. With Connor healthy, though, knock on wood, there is no reason to play Cedric Benson's brother Trey. Jordan, the numbers, Mason, what do they mean? Will continue to be the must-start running back, one of the must-start running backs in fantasy football until Christian McCaffrey potentially shows up. And now the term potentially has been thrown out there. It's not when he returns, it's potentially, right? It comes out that he has double Achilles tendonitis. That doesn't sound good at all. And at this point, I really don't think he's going to come back. Now, I am as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, so you can't take my word as bond. But what I read doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound good when a guy goes to fucking Germany to go get his legs checked out. That never is good. It's just never good. Now, maybe he does come back in December. But by then, if you have McCaffrey and you don't have Jordan Mason. I just combined the first letter of his name with the other part of his name. Jason. The numbers, Jason. What do they mean? Right? I think you're probably fucked, right, if you drafted McCaffrey. But top 12 running back in 3 or 4 games for Mason. And against a Cardinals team that just got Eiffel Towered by Bijan and Jeremy McNichols, Mason should stay with the crown on his head, Robert Baratheon style, as a clear top 8 must-start running back. Guerrero is the backup. If he got 2 touches, you would be lucky, so you don't start him. Next up, we got the Green Bay Packers at the Los Angeles Rams. Now, despite the loss of Puka, despite the loss of Kupp for at least the next couple of weeks, the offense has taken that step backwards, right? They don't look like the same offense, and they don't look like the same offense that they will be when those guys return. But Kyren lives in the end zone. The guy has a fucking 5-star estate in the end zone. 6 touchdowns on the season with 2 top 12 finishes in a row. Against the Packers defense, I think Kyren should be a top 12 running back yet again, and he should be ranked there. All of the Kyren faders, Nick, it's impossible for him to have that good of production again, blah, 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 Blake Corum this, Blake Corum that. Blake Corum barely ever fucking sees the field, man. Ronnie Rivers continues to operate as the running back too. Ronnie Rivers, I make this joke all the time, he sounds like either a porn star or a background extra, one of Mike the Situation's friends from Jersey Shore. He Corum must have banged McVay's wife, though, because based upon where he was drafted, I think he's better than Ronnie Rivers, but he never sees the field. Kyren is an 80+% snap share guy weekly. There's no need to play Rivers, and you got to play Kyren. We just saw Aaron Jones have a solid game against them and the Packers. So Jacobs looked good early on in the game. He averaged 5.7 yards per carry up against the cold like Minesota Vikings, but with the Packers getting embarrassed for a majority of the game, they couldn't run the ball. Obviously, when you're getting clobbered like that, you can't run. You just can't. He was able to salvage his day, though, with 4 receptions on 6 targets for 27 yards. He had 51 rushing yards as well. I still strongly believe in the talent of Jacobs. And with Jordan Love back, I think the team's going to kick it into high gear. I think Jordan Love is going to finally become reliable when it comes to running the football, right? Because he hasn't been that reliable early on. The Rams matchup is definitely softer compared to that Vikings run defense. So Jacobs belongs in the top 12 running back conversation, even if he has yet to hit that sexually as a Packers player. Emmanuel Wilson looks decent. He's a solid handcuff. We just saw him, though, finish as the running back 13 a couple weeks ago up against the Titans in week 3. But I'm hesitant to think he really does that on a repeated basis with Jacobs there, so I just can't consider playing him. Next up, we got game number 12, the final game before we move on into the primetime games here. We got the Giants, the New York Football Giants at the Seahawks. Kenneth Walker returns from the oblique injury after missing 2 games like a bat out of hell. Over 100 all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns in Detroit on Monday Night Football. While the Seahawks ultimately got slapped up in this game by the Lions, like it was so bad that Amon-Ra St. Brown threw a fucking touchdown to Jared Goff. This was how Sean Strickland dog-walked Israel Adesanya, right? I do, though, expect Walker to continue to print fantasy points. The Seahawks offense is beautiful. Chef's kiss. I didn't do it. That was just a little weird. I just fucking kissed you guys. No diddy. Chef's kiss. Man, you freak. The offense looks solid. And against the Giants, I think we could see Walker in the end zone multiple times. He is a clear top 10 running back for me on the week, which means he is a must start. Now, with Kenneth Walker III back, Charbonnet is essentially thrown out of the offense. Now, he did see 5 targets last week, but I don't see that being the normal. With Walker healthy, Schaubs belongs on the bench. Devin Singletary, I know a lot of people are going to give up on him, right? Because he was fist deep in your rectum. He gave you a colonoscopy last week with just 5 fantasy points up against the Cowboys on Thursday Night Football. And it always hurts worse when your player shits the bed and it's on a primetime game. It's not like there's other games to, hold your sorrows in, It was just Singletary doing diddly squat on Thursday Night Football. But he's still the lead clear back on the team. And prior to last week, he was a top 12 running back in back-to-back weeks, scoring 15 or more points in each showing. Now, Seattle is middle of the pack against the run, and they were banged up against the run. They're banged up on defense last week because, the Lions literally ran a train on them. I do expect the Seahawks defense to bounce back, but Singletary should at least be a low-end RB2 to high-end running back 3. Not a guy that I'm going to highly advocate for, but again, I know there's always a lot of comments that are like, Nick, you have so many guys listed as starts. Basically, you just start every starting running back, right, Nick? You fucking idiot. What's the point of this video? If your takeaway from the video, if you watch the video and your takeaway is that, then I don't think you actually listen to what I say, because I do give a good barometer of where I have them ranked. You can check out the rankings on Patreon. They get uploaded typically on Wednesday or Thursday, and the rankings videos will be out later on in the week. Patreon is $7.50 but a month, but the main takeaway should be I give my assessment, how they've been recently, how I like the matchup, and then I say, hey, you know what? I like this guy top 10, top 5, must start, top 12. He's, middling running back 2, high-end running back 2, or, you know what, if, push comes to shove, you can start him. That's kind of where Devin Singletary is. Low-end running back 2 to high-end running back 3. Now I'm going to continue to say that, hey, Tracy is a better running back than Singletary, but with the team still leaning towards Singletary, and with Eric Gray still being there, you can't really roster Tracy or start him. Next out, we move to, 'cause you waited all day for Sunday night, the Dallas Cowboys at the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a game that could be fun. I mean, the Steelers defense looks good. The Cowboys defense looks a little bit fraudulent, but Najee continues to be on the safe side of things weekly. Now, his upside's capped by the fact that Justin Fields could run in literally 3 touchdowns any given game, and by the fact that the offense as a whole just isn't the greatest. But Najee's locked into 15 carries a game. normally and like 2 or more targets, and he's going to continue to put up back-end running back 2 numbers. This week, though, you notice on the screen, Aaron Shampklin is listed as the running back 2. I don't think Warren's going to play. I don't think Patterson's going to play. So Najee should see even more touches. Again, am I ever going to sit here and be ecstatic about starting Najee Harris? The answer to that is just going to be no, right? Unless he really starts to look better than he has recently, I don't think he will ever be that. I mean, he shit the bed last week against the Colts in a wet dream matchup in Indy. But without Warren, without Patterson, like, he should see so much volume that you just have to put him as a middling running back 2 to low-end running back 2. If he scores, you're finally going to be very happy. If not, you're going to be like, you know what? At least he wasn't a disaster. For Shampklin, like I said, I don't think that Warren's going to play. Mark Caboli, senior writer for The Athletic, covering the Steelers since 2002, believes that Jaylen Warren will not be back anytime soon. And even if he does return, which is kind of just like a cop-out, he's not going to be back anytime soon. But, you know, if he does return, he's not going to see a bunch of looks. No shit, Sherlock. But while I do assume you shouldn't take anyone's word as gospel, I don't think that that's a crazy assumption at all. Like, Cordell Patterson was carted off with a ankle injury in the second quarter against the Colts. So now we're going to have to rely on Aaron Shampklin as the running back 2. And Shampklin is a undrafted free agent from Harvard. While he might be wicked smart, he's been passed around the NFL a bunch of times like a blunt at a party. So even if he gets just a few touches, there is just no reason you'd want to play him in fantasy. For the Cowboys, it appears to finally be Rico Dowdle season in Dallas, as Zeke has been shoved into the locker with fewer than 20% of snaps in back-to-back showings. Last week, Dowdle had his most amount of carries on the season against the Giants and was able to find the end zone. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like what I've seen out of Dowdle was amazing. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like Dowdle is going to be this amazing running back, because I don't think he is. But I think if the offense could kick it into high gear, which they can any given week, probably not this week against the Steelers, but just going forward, that's a team that can score 30-plus points in any given game, and that's going to help out Dowdle. But the matchup here being against the Steelers puts Dowdle in that fringe start range. Any hope of Zeke being the lead back is basically finished, as his snaps and touches have been siphoned away. Zeke's old ass belongs on the waiver. Final game here, Monday Night Football, the New Orleans Saints at the Kansas City Chiefs. Alvin Kamara continues to be one of the biggest steals in fantasy football drafts, which I told you guys to draft, so hopefully you listen to the boy if you're new and you didn't hear that take. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button down below as well. Helps me out a ton. So his worst game this season has been the running back 15, and he has 3 top 6 finishes on the season. Round of applause for him. Kamara sees so many touches weekly that he is incredibly reliable. Even when the Saints offense doesn't look impeccable like Margot Robbie in Wolf of Wall Street, Kamara is still going nuclear. And while the Chiefs defense has been rock solid, like my Willie seeing Margot Robbie in Wolf of Wall Street, I expect Kamara to be great every single week. I expect greatness out of him. He almost like rewinded the clock because he didn't look as great last year. He looks way better. He should be a top 6 running back weekly. Jamal Williams, there are going to be games where Taysom Hill has more carries than him, and unless the game is a blowout in the Saints' favor, you're just not going to see Jamal Williams get many touches. He's like a 2 or 3 touch week guy, so you're just not going to start him. For the Chiefs, I am hesitant to put Kareem Hunt as a start, so he's in that fringe start range. Now, the reason behind that isn't because Kareem Hunt looked bad in his debut. He actually saw a ton of volume, and as he gets more and more comfortable in this offense, I think he's going to have better showings. But, and this is a big but, shout out Lisa Ann, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is expected to come back. And that makes things even more tough to decipher here, right? This backfield not only has Hunt, now going to have Helaire, now has P. Ryan, and the crocodile alligator wrangler himself, Carson Steele. So while Hunt looked good last week, and while he didn't have like a big game, he looked solid, he looked reliable. He's not fully washed. what is really the floor now with so many guys on the offense? Now, the ceiling is still high because he's on the Chiefs, right? But the offense isn't going to be as good because they don't have Rashee Rice. They don't have Hollywood Brown. Juju might end up being this wide receiver too. Now, that could lead on them really hinging on Kareem Hunt, but there's just so many question marks to where, like, do you really want to start him? You can because he looked good, but it's just weird. Like, P. Ryan, he found the end zone last week on 5 touches. You're not going to start him. Hunt should get a majority of the touches, but again, fucking Clyde Edwards-Helaire might cut into things. This seems very confusing. Again, Hunt's another one of these guys. Hey, if 4 teams aren't on bye, you're not even discussing starting Hunt. So the matchup isn't the greatest. I'm worried. He's just barely a start, though. He's just barely peeking over the fence, like in home improvement, to become a start. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Shout out to Tim, the Tool Man Allen. I love you guys all so much. I hope you guys have a great rest of your guys' day. We will be back later today with the wide receiver start sit video. So check out any of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen already. Make sure you guys do check out Underdog. Promo code Notorious to get that free pick. Kirk Thuggins over half of a total yard, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. I love you guys all dearly. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your guys' day. And I hope that you come back later to watch the wide receiver version of today's video. There'll also be quarterback and tight end version later on Wednesday. Love you guys all so much. Check out one of the videos on the screen if you haven't seen them already. Hit that subscribe button like it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video. Have a great one. As always, good boy.